Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, April 2nd, 2015. Please rise as Pastor Pat Dietrich of the First Lutheran Church leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Sean Cisneros, son of Wendy Cisneros from the City Secretary's office. Pastor Dietrich.
Oh, good and gracious God, on this beautiful spring day, we are aware of the new life that you present to us every single day, and we thank and praise you for that. We pray for this city council, for the decisions that they make, for the rulings that they make. We pray for their wisdom, their strength, and for their courage. Lord, we pray that you will be with them this evening, that you will be in this whole community, guiding us and helping us through good days and through bad. We pray for our nation and for those places in the world that are suffering because of terror, because of inclement weather, and because of poverty and drought. Be and abide with us, Lord Jesus, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Sean, you want to come up here? All right.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sean, come up. Hey, Sean, come here for a sec. I usually want to leave pretty quickly, too.
It's coming around back.
Oh, cool. All right. So we have some City of Temple swag for you. I have a City of Temple pin.
What?
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then we've got a whole little bag of goodies. Thank you for doing this. I offered to let Sean sit here and run the meeting. He probably would have done a better job, but he declined. But thank you. We'll give Sean a round of applause. Now we have a time for public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may sign up to do so prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this portion of the meeting. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. And we have no one signed up for public comments. Item 3, I have a proclamation for Fair Housing Month. And if I could ask Ashley Williams, General Services Manager, to come up. Whereas April marks the 47th anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Law, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, creed, national origin, sex, familial status, and handicap, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. Whereas the ongoing struggle for dignity and housing opportunity for all is not the exclusive province of the federal government, vigorous local efforts to combat discrimination can be as effective, if not more so, than federal courts. Whereas the Central Texas Council of Governments is organized in accordance with Section 391 of the Local Government Code and encompasses the regions of Bell, Coryell, Hamilton, Lampasas, Milam, Mills, and San Saba counties. And whereas April is Fair Housing Month, and the year of 2015 is the 47th anniversary of the passing of the Fair Housing Act. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2015 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Temple, Texas. And I encourage all fellow citizens to become aware of and support the fair housing laws. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this the 2nd day of April 2015. Ms. Williams, would you like to say anything about? All right, thank you. You can reserve that right. Thank you very much. Item 4 is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, the consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the Council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. Council, this is item 4A through 4H. Are there any items that you wish to remove for separate consideration or discussion? There being none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 4A through 4H.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Item 5, first reading and public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 financing and project plans for years 2015 through 2016. Mr. Bernard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I went through this in detail during the work session, so I'll just touch on some highlights tonight. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this was reviewed and recommended and approved, reviewed by the Finance Committee and recommended to the RZ number 1 board and approved on March 25th. Next slide, please. Part of the planning process leading up to this amendment was reviewing project budgets, included joint meetings with the project committee. The committees discussed execution and delivery of all the projects included on the reinvestment zone master plan. That included project scope, project design, reviewed the right-of-way acquisition and updates on the right-of-way to determine when projects could actually, roads, etc., be built. And also reviewed, had some actual construction bids come in. And part of the plan, too, with this amendment and continued amendments is to continue to align funding in the year with which the project is planned to be delivered. Next slide. The total amendment before you totals $9,531,000. It includes additional funding for projects that total close to $4.3 million, includes right-of-way and property acquisition, additional funding of close to $4.9 million, and then it also includes a new program funding the downtown transformation team, and that totals $373,000. Just a detail of the projects that total $4.3 million. It was additional funding for Avenue R intersections and Friars Creek Trail project, funding for the North Lucius McKelvey extension, airport enhancement projects, improvements on 31st Street to intersections and sidewalks, and then also additional funding for Pepper Creek Detention Pond. Next slide, please. The source of funds for this amendment that totaled $9.5 million included project savings of $800,000, developer cost-sharing contributions of over $300,000, Gulf States Toyota dissolution payment of $1.1 million, and then a reduction in a project that was funded in 2016, the Research Parkway or Outer Loop, that totaled $7,287,000. Within your packet, too, you have a detailed financing plan and a summary financing plan with detailed project plan. And that concludes my presentation, and be happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Council, any questions? There being no questions, at this time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of this ordinance.
Motion for approval?
Second. You have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Abstain.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Item 6, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance granting a zoning change from agricultural district to single-family 1 on lots 1 and 2, Block 2, first replat of North Cliff HOA addition, Phase 1, located at 110 and 116 North Cliff Drive. Ms. Larley.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. And as you stated, this request is for rezoning from, thank you. This is a request for rezoning from the Ag District to Single Family 1 District for 2 existing residential lots. And the rezoning request will bring the lots into compliance with our UDC Article 4 regarding zoning districts and lot sizes. Right now, the 2 existing lots are zoned ag, but in order to build on them, through our building permit process, they need to be at least 1 acre each. And so currently, they do not meet that 1 acre size. And also, this property is going through the plating process for a plat to be known as the final plat of Northcliffe HOA Edition, and it's known as PFY 1513. And basically, it's waiting for this request to go through the review process before it comes through. And so on the screen, I have a picture of the two lots in question, and they are these two lots in yellow hatching. They're just at the northeast corner of Northcliffe Drive and Sharing Drive. And so to the north of the properties are undeveloped land within the subdivision, and then to the east is a single-family residential property. To the south is single-family residential property, and then to the west is also single-family residential property. Within the single-family one district that's been requested, allowed uses are single-family detached dwellings and industrialized housing. Prohibited uses would be manufactured homes, patio homes, or single-family attached dwellings, townhouses, duplexes, halfway houses, and then, of course, any kind of retail or non-commercial uses. And then on the screen, I have some development standards for the single-family residential district, with the minimum lot size being 7,500 square feet. The minimum lot width would be 60 feet wide, and then the minimum lot depth is 100 feet. For the property, it is shown as suburban residential, so the request is in compliance with the land use and character map. And we show that Sharing Drive and Northcliffe Drive are both local streets, which is suitable for residential development. And for the property, we do have utilities that are available for the property. We have water lines that are shown on the screen in blue. We actually have a 6-inch water line that runs through the north end of the subject property. So at this moment, the applicants are not proposing to build a house, but they want to get zoning established for that in case they ever do decide to build on the north lot. We also have some sewer line in the area, which is shown as the red line, and it's an existing 8-inch line. We mailed out 17 notices. We received one in agreement, which is shown with the little green A and off to the east of the property, and we received 5 in disagreement of the request. And the statements that we received back were based on the fact that they wanted those lots open for playground for the children in the area, and they also did not want any more homes in the area. They were afraid of increased traffic. And so as far as the compliance with our regulations, this request is in compliance with the future land use plan. It's compatible with surrounding uses and zoning. It is in compliance with utility plan and in compliance with the thoroughfare plan. And so staff is recommending approval of a ZFY 1506 for rezoning from ag to single family 1. And at the March 2nd, 2015 meeting, the P&Z Commission unanimously recommended approval of this request. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Ms. Larley. Council, any questions?
All the other surrounding lots that are, I guess it'd be south of that, or all face Sharing Drive. These face the entrance. Drainage is set up on Sharing Drive to go down in bar ditches down both sides of Sharing Drive. How's the drainage with those gonna? I mean, down the center of the lot, they're gonna dump right into the side of a center lot, or to the would be east, I guess. I know there's several lots in there that are having drainage problems coming, that front the lake road. that are having drainage problems that go up front, is that going to be affected in any way, form, or fashion?
No, actually, the proposed plat that we're reviewing actually has both of those existing lots being turned 90 degrees so that they would be, their new locations would be off of Sharing Drive. So they would actually be turned counterclockwise perpendicular. So they would both be off of Sharing Drive, and the drainage is also being looked at through the platting process.
Council, any other questions? This time I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of item 6.
Motion to approve item 6.
Second.
A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Item 7, a first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing amendments to Articles 5, 6, 7, and 11 of the Temple Unified Development Code. Then.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. These are our next batch of a Unified Development Code text amendments, case number ZFY 1508. This was considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 2nd, and it's brought to you tonight for the first reading. We always try and summarize what the intent of the most recent batch we're bringing to you is, and for this round of amendments, we are proposing to provide clarification and correction to unclear sections of the code. We are proposing to adjust regulations to unique development situations, in some cases providing exceptions where it makes sense, and imposing new regulations to certain sections where the language of the code seems not to support the spirit of the section or the general objectives of the section. The first item we'd like to bring to you is Article 5, having to do with use standards. These are specific use standards relating to alcoholic beverage sales for off-premise consumption, otherwise known as package stores. This has to do with the signs. Currently, signs are required to be turned off at closing time. This has been problematic when these signs are being advertised as part of a multi-tenant sign. So we are proposing an exemption for when a package store is being advertised in a sign that is part of a multi-tenant sign, that this particular provision does not apply. We're proposing amending the sections related to landscaping and building exterior materials as they apply to the John Miller Central Texas Regional Airport. The unique development needs of this particular site doesn't always work well with some of our development regulations. Most of our development regulations, access and circulation, and some of those that are in Article 7 still would be applicable, but building materials and landscaping have not always been compatible with the unique development needs and the special character of this area. That, combined with reinvestment zone development initiatives and improvement initiatives in that area, give us some assurance that will always maintain a very positive standard and a standard that is appropriate for that the unique development needs of the airport. So we're proposing exempting the airport from both landscaping and building material standards located in Article 7. We are proposing an ordinance. In the ordinance, we are proposing the prohibition of freestanding personal wireless towers in all I-35 sub-districts. We do have a gentleman consultant, Mr. Vince Hubinger, who will be here today to represent. He's a consultant for personal wireless service facilities. We have invited him to come visit with us, and we spoke with him earlier this week. And after his presentation, we have some additional language that could be added to the ordinance should council wish it. At this point, we are proposing that it be eliminated in I-35, but he would like to make a case for stealth facilities, and we are prepared to adjust that given your guidance. The biggest changes that are being proposed this evening have to do with HUD code manufactured homes. There are several problems in the code. We thought we would go in and just deal with screening. We typically address the code first, trying to put a Band-Aid on little issues that pop up, but we sometimes end up having to deal with multiple issues as we start to realize that there are a lot of problems with the regulations. In this case, there were several. The references to all manufactured homes that are not located in a land use community as a subdivision, ambiguity of screening standards, presence of a special district called MH is still lingering in our special district section, Article 6. And then lack of a side yard setback requirement. Some of these have changed over the years. They were more clear before, and they have, since the UDC was adopted, some of these standards have changed, and we are trying to take the best of what was and what is and make it as clear as possible for staff who's responsible for interpretation. And these are the sections that would have to be amended to address all the manufactured housing items that we are trying to correct this evening. Again, the word subdivision replaced development in this iteration of our zoning code. Previous codes, it was called a development. We think it was changed to encourage the platting of all land lease communities and manufactured home developments. It creates a little bit of confusion. It's not, I'd say, consistently referenced as a subdivision in the code. It does create some confusion for staff. Staff would prefer to refer back to the term development for all manufactured homes that are not located in a land lease community or a manufactured home park, and eliminate the term subdivision. We prefer to defer to state law and our city ordinances to determine when plats are necessary and not use that term subdivision as a mechanism. It has not been an effective mechanism anyway. We are proposing a new regulation for a HUD code manufactured home development, which would be anything outside a manufactured home park, or otherwise known as a land lease community. Only one HUD code manufactured home is allowed per lot or unplatted property. We have some language in the code now that suggests this, but it's a little confusing because it seems like it would also apply to land lease communities. We would like to just say for developments, that's everything outside a land lease community. It's basically one HUD code manufactured home per lot or unplatted property. We think that this could have the benefit of encouraging when you have multiple manufactured home siting on a single unplatted property or lot. It could encourage the platting mechanism, but more importantly, we think it will prevent the proliferation of unlicensed and unregulated land lease communities or manufactured home parks that we may not be aware of. If you're adding a second, it would need to be subdivided and put on a separate lot. This would prevent multiple from siting in a lot and being rented out for without the benefit of inspections and licensing. Ambiguity of screening standards. This was the Band-Aid we actually went in to fix because there was some confusion about this. The language seemed to suggest that whether you're in a manufactured home park or whether you're a single home in the middle of an ag district, that the screening needed to be provided at the perimeter of the entire development. This was a matter of confusion for staff, depending on how you looked at it. The perimeter development, you could say, could be just around the home, but it seemed to suggest it was around the entire site. There was this idea that a 40 linear feet of all along the boundary, every 40 linear feet you had to provide a canopy tree and a continuous row of shrubs. These two items we thought needed some adjustment. For land lease communities or manufactured home parks, what hasn't changed? Screening is still required around the entire development, and you can see we would absolutely take into account existing vegetative screening. We would never take down a tree to put up another tree. If there's screening available by natural vegetation, we are absolutely willing to consider that, and I think that probably is the case in the image on the screen. One canopy tree every 40 feet, we still are holding to that standard. And then the wall standards, we have just clarified that this section wasn't referenced correctly, but we have just kept those standards essentially the same. What has changed, we are requiring 6 shrubs required every 40 feet between the canopy trees rather than a continuous row. We are trying to think to ourselves, what are we trying to achieve? And we think that this is probably a more fair standard on a very large site. And then a burning option, which was not allowed before. If you are willing to burn part of your perimeter, you can reduce the required landscaping by 15%. So a little bit more flexibility for potential manufactured home parks that might come in the future. This would be for manufactured home developments, formerly known as subdivisions, but should you approve it tonight, they would be called developments, which is anything that's not in a manufactured home park. What hasn't changed? Nothing. Everything's changed. We've changed everything on this one. We don't require screening around the entire perimeter of the development. We now require screening only around the manufactured home, not the development. And then we're proposing 1 canopy tree every 30 feet and then 5 shrubs between the canopy trees. We just actually walked it out and tried to measure, and we tried to come up with a reasonable standard on that made sense to us as a staff. We don't just kind of pull it out of the sky. We're actually walking and measuring, saying, does this make sense? And then we allowed a decorative fence option. We don't expect it to be utilized very often, but if you do choose to combine a decorative fence, you can reduce your landscaping by 30%. Just a quick example of what the differerences are. The first one on the left is a manufactured home park, and on the right is just a single development, what it would look like. So as those, most of these, this is really only allowed in the ag district. So as land gets subdivided, particularly for the developments and sold off in pieces, we still have what we consider a fairly good screening mechanism, as these areas are typically areas in transition, these agricultural areas, and they're usually larger tracts. And as the area moves towards new standard development, we think that will help to ensure that we have a good screening around all these particular uses. This zoning district, this manufactured home zoning district, still exists in our special overlay district section. There are 37 parcels that carry this zoning designation, and we have 3 major manufactured home land lease communities. Staff does not look to the special district section to govern manufactured homes. We look to Article 5, the use section, and the specific use standards attached to manufactured homes to tell us what zoning district that manufactured homes are allowed and to give us the specific use standards related to manufactured homes. This zoning district is a holdover. It's not something that can be requested. If you come to staff looking to site a mobile home, we would direct you to the use table and the specific use standards. This is sort of a holdover from, I think, a previous zoning designation. It's really not allowed anywhere in the city anymore. It's really only allowed in ag. Staff is proposing this language, basically saying that the manufactured home district is obsolete and it cannot be requested, that the requirements for existing manufactured home zoning would still be in place per Article 6, but that Section 5.32 would help guide us regarding any future manufactured home land lease communities. So we are basically just saying this is really not requestable. You must, if you decide to do this, it needs to be in compliance with Article 5. This is really a holdover. Somehow we lost our side setbacks. We had them in previous codes. They seem to have disappeared, so staff is proposing a 20-foot setback. But while we were looking at that, we took a look at the front setbacks, which are currently 20 feet, and we realized that the single-family detached home in an ag district has a 50-foot setback. This is not even consistent with what a single-family home would be required for a single-family home, so we just proposing making it the same. And we are proposing a rear setback of 20 feet. So we've just adjusted the setbacks to be consistent with as they once were or as seem to make sense. So there's a couple changes in the area, in the setbacks. This item has actually changed since we took this to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Originally, the standard required that a new unit that's placed in a new or expanding development or land lease community or on an existing lot or pad in a development or land lease community, we had recommended that those be the same. It was only that there was a requirement that the structure could be no more than 10 years, but that was only for a for a existing pad or lot. We had proposed going ahead and making that 10 years for an expanded subdivision as well. It's kind of been policy for staff to treat both situations the same and require that a new manufactured home be at minimum of 10 years of age, no matter where it's put in. We spoke to a Bruce Fowler who owns Derby Woods. We actually sent the ordinance out to all the manufactured home sales representatives that we could find within city limits, and then we contacted a couple of these manufactured home owners. Mr. Bruce Fowler responded to us and said, this is a tough standard for us 10 years is a really hard, expensive, anything less than 10 years really does push the threshold, and it prevents people from replacing sort of dilapidated structures with more current structures, because the 10-year is really a drop-off point where, a point where there's a substantial increase. He proposed a 15-year standard for both expanded manufactured home developments or land use communities or existing lots. Just basically, when new ones are placed, they have to be 15 years, no longer than 15 years. Planning and Zoning Commission approved 10 years. Staff is bringing, that certainly is in your packet, presented that way. We would like you to consider the second consideration based on input from representatives from that community. Staff is comfortable with that recommendation. And I apologize, sometimes folks come to talk to us when things have already gone. We try and get them in here early, but they don't always come when we want them. At its meeting on March 2nd, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously 7-0 to approve amendments to the Unified Development Code. And I'd be glad to answer any questions. Again, I do have a presentation that Mr. Hubinger brought for us to look at, and I would look to Mayor to let me know if you would like to see that. He is here with us today, and I think would like to present that.
That would be fine. Council, is that all right? Please go ahead.
I was going to do that for you, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Well, actually, let me open the public hearing first, if you don't mind. Actually, let me ask Council, are there any questions before I open the public hearing? All right. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mayor Dunn, council members, my name is Vince Hubinger. I'm with Vincent Gerard & Associates, predominantly a planning and zoning consultant. But for the last 15 or 20 years, we've been doing lots of wireless work for the most of the carriers around. In talking to Beverly about another site outside of town in Bryan, we sat down and went over some, what I consider some friendly amendments or revisions to her draft ordinance prohibiting any freestanding towers in the I-35 corridor. What briefly you see on the screen that I presented here is just a monopole, basically. A standard monopole is pretty much indiscreet in most places. A lot of times I stand up in front of council and ask them where the closest tower is to their house, and they don't know there's one about 200 yards behind them. So we use these so frequently, and we need to use them all the time. But it was originally designed as a mobile network. We're driving down the road, passing from tower to tower, and with the advancement of smartphones now, we're running multiple apps. We're wanting to use these in our homes, in our offices, and everything. Every 5 minutes we're using something, texting our kids. So the existing network is at capacity, over capacity. So what you'll see possibly in the next 2 or 3 years is a lot of the carriers, all four of them, trying to expand their network to continue to keep up with the phones that we have today. They're really going crazy. The standard monopoles like that, if you roll to the next one, you can see this one is also a standard monopole with multiple antennas on that. What they tend to do is the last 10 years they've been loading as many antennas as they can to increase the capacity for the smartphones. They can get up to 12 on those sites, and sometimes frequently on large corridors like I-35 in big intersections where they're also doing capacity and coverage. They will load them up to 12 per carrier per ring. The next one, Beverly, is what we call a flush mount. It's more, I guess, inconspicuous, but it takes the 3 antennas and puts it right up against the monopole. When we get into the next one, these are the self-enclosed monopoles, and I'll show this to you in a little bit with a flagpole on it, but this is one we did in New Braunfels for Verizon. And it was right on their loop, and they were very concerned about this as well. The next slide shows what's inside it. Now, they have these canisters that go around it, and the good thing about stealth, which if this is a flagpole, is 99% of the people outside this room don't even know it's a cell tower because it looks just like that. But they only have 4 rings to use. For instance, if you're using stealth and you're going to the extreme expense to do this, you're pretty much a single carrier, because you're going to go into 3, 6, 9 antennas, and you may have one ring left. The next slide shows, oh, I must have put it out of order. Go further. The next slide shows the canisters they're enveloping so you don't see the antenna. Go to the next one, please. That's what it looks like. That's one in San Antonio, and the next one shows I believe that's another stealth altogether. That's something we had to do in Hearst, where we have to have multiple carriers on that. It's designed by Stealth, and it is a nice, attractive star looking. It's 3 monopoles with stealth fabric around it so they can hide the antenna in those 1, 2, and 3 rings. Somehow I'm missing one. Go again. Oh. Okay, you can stop there. This is what we talked about with Beverly and Brian. Basically, if you're going to preclude any freestanding, at least allow some kind of stealth requirements. That would enable us to get in some coverage areas where we have problems so everybody can use their phone. It'll also allow Brian and Beverly the chance to look at the definitions at the bottom criteria for approval. It allows them to say, okay, does this meet the criteria or not? And we will be able to do something within that area. It's important to note that we all need the phones, we all need to use them, and we certainly don't want to corrupt or obstruct any views in that area. That's the main thing. But we also look for existing vertical structures whenever possible and try to get on those. I know that's brief, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions? Thank you for, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Who would be responsible for the flags and the upkeep of them, and would there be a requirement that they stayed on the pole?
That's a good question. That's the lease terms. Most of the time, we try to let the landowners be responsible for the flags, and we provide them the flags. The biggest complaint we have on flags is the rope noise, the ding, ding, ding. But we're also challenged to try to get into residential areas like the one in New Braunfels, so we have to come up with some solution. So it depends. It's part of the lease agreement.
Personally, for me, I mean, just a single pole sticking up, whether it's 20 feet out in the right-of-way or 200 feet out of the right-of-way, you're still going to see the pole going down I-35. So I'm open to any of these types. Not so much maybe the flag because of the maintenance issue and who's going to monitor, who's going to put it at half mast, and all those types of things. It's going to be perceived that that's a city flag, and we should be maintaining it. And more than likely, that could be what happens. And so I wouldn't want to take on that responsibility. But I'm not opposed to any of these decorative pieces that you've presented.
Council, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on item 7? I will declare the public hearing closed.
Mayor?
Yes, well,
I did want to just remind the council that we are prohibiting all freestanding towers, but not any co-location. But that should it be the council's will, staff has drafted some language that would permit stealth freestanding facilities. We'd be glad to show you that. Unless you are comfortable with just prohibiting them altogether, we are prepared to go either direction given your guidance.
Would it be a possibility to, anywhere within the quarter, to review by council any type proposed, and not just say we're not going to have them, period? So propose a style because one style may be better in a different area than another. One flag may be over here and a whatever over there. So any type of tower, if they could present that in the quarter anyway, maybe come by council for approval.
Mayor Pro Tem, we have it. We have written it as an administrative item that stealth facilities could be considered by the Director of Planning, given some criteria. It's sufficiently camouflaged, size, scale, appropriateness of the structure to the surrounding architecture. But certainly that could be that would require me to kind of go back and draft some specific conditional use language. We had proposed it as an administrative item. If the Director of Planning felt like it was something he could not approve, it would be subject to the appeal process that is currently in place for I-35, and that would come to council. But we tried to kind of provide an escape valve on this one, but only for stealth facilities. That means facilities that are blended, and so it may or may not include a monopole, depending on how well that is camouflaged and made to blend in with the immediate architecture and surrounding area.
I mean, for me, even some of the ones that have the antenna, the first ones you signed, showed could fit in some locations, possibly in the industrial area or whatever it might be. If there's some pre-existing other telephone towers or telephone line towers or power pole towers or something like that, it could fit. I don't know. You probably would never see them. So that's. I mean, I don't know what everyone else thought is on that.
Well, I would certainly be happier keeping it just as an administrative change. I mean, that just adds one more layer that prospective folks would have to go through to get this passed. While I don't think we always see them when we drive by, I like the idea of the flagpole or something that can be camouflaged in some way from it being an actual cell phone tower.
And I don't think we'll probably see 2 or 3 or 4 of these a month anyway, so it's probably not going to be a huge.
I don't know, do you use your phone a lot?
No.
I always hesitate just to, have a blanket no, we're not going to allow it. So I'd be in favor of allowing the stealth tower.
So just for clarification, should council direct staff to go ahead and add this language that is up on the screen right now? This language would be consistently placed in the sections listed, and this is really just all the sub-district sections that are in Article 7 relating to I-35, and then 5.4.2, which is the section that relates to specific use standards related to personal wireless facilities. It would just be this language instead of saying towers are prohibited in all these districts, this language would be put in there instead. So we don't have that prepared in a track change document for you, but if your motion includes an update to these sections and to add a new definition for stealth personal wireless service facilities, those sections to be updated, we can incorporate that sort of administrative escape valve for stealth facilities, and that would be reviewed by the Director of Planning. If there is a objection on the part of the applicant and appeal is filed, that would come to council.
Stealth personal wireless service facility is not a company. That's just the type. There's multiple companies that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Stealth, is the stealth only the flagpole, or is that the different examples that we saw? Are those all considered stealth?
It's my understanding, and I'll ask Mr. Hubinger to correct me if I'm not right, that not all monopoles are stealth. If you look at this this definition, screen, disguise, concealed, or otherwise camouflaged, a natural structure or part of a structure. So there is a little bit of a higher standard for a stealth facility. So not every monopole would, I think, be a stealth facility. But I may be wrong on that. I'm not sure.
We used the Round Rock definition from this when we worked on there, and that's verbatim from that. It just depends what the community wants. If they want to include stealth, self-enclosed without the flag or with the flag, it's your decision. At least it gives the carriers an option to provide something.
What about the concealed? Or you had a picture of one that had kind of.
That was the
one.
flush mount. Yeah, those are fairly popular.
Is that stealth or no?
Based on that definition there that we have, no. That you can see the antenna, so that wouldn't be camouflaged to look like another natural feature or something like a flagpole.
Well, what about the one with the star on top of it? I mean that doesn't seem like it's very like that.
Yeah,
Is that up? What is that one?
that is a stealth facility. It's disguised or indistinguishable between seeing the antennas and a cell tower.
Is it disguised as a star?
No, it's basically not like a monopole, standard monopole. So in some communities, they have adopted that as a stealth facility in their definitions.
All right.
That would be expensive.
But is that considered a monopole?
No.
And that's not, it's got three, yeah, I was gonna say, I just wanted to make, I'm sorry, I mean, I'm counting, but.
Three, yeah.
By all means,
Yeah,
one.
never
And
mind.
as a matter of fact, that's a good point. I don't even think it would comply
Well,
with the.
and if you look at that definition of stealth, it really would depend on the immediate area. You know, it'd need to kind of blend. This might actually blend in very well with whatever was in the immediate proximity. It would be a determination that the director of planning would take a look at and see, is this compatible with the development in that immediate area? Does it blend in? So it could vary depending on what type of facility is being proposed and to what degree that is architecturally compatible. So there's a component of I would say discretion that is in there based on what the existing development is.
I think all these have that component, even the flush mount antenna. I mean, to me, they all have that component. But it's just going to be what your whose definition sitting in that seat whenever someone comes in and says stealth and no stealth, yes or no. That's going to be kind of the.
There's some basic criteria, but I would say that it is, it is, I think, to a certain degree discretionary, sufficiently camouflaged based on type, size, scale, and appropriateness of structure. The stealth facility resembles. So they're essentially trying to get the facility to mimic or be compatible with the immediate structures. So that is one of the criteria, but certainly there's interpretation that would take place in there.
Thank you. Council, let me. Well, if there is no further discussion, I guess we could run this up the flagpole and see. I will entertain a motion on item 7.
Mayor, I apologize for jumping, but there's because there's these other changes that we would require the updates per. I don't know if we could just say as presented by staff, and you may recall that we're asking to for section 5.3.2 to allow for a 15-year replacement manufactured home in land lease communities, existing or new and expanding, moving from 10 and adding that requirement to existing ones as well. So I'm so sorry. We try and get folks in to give us input early, and sometimes they trail behind when we get these out, and then we don't want to discount valuable input from the community in changing these standards, so we try and bring them to you before it's too late.
Would it be possible, would it be feasible for your staff to review any cell towers to see if they're compatible with where you want to put them in that, and not call it stealth, just say any, whether they're stealth or not stealth. I mean that would give the opportunity for the applicant to argue that does fit or not fit, and if it doesn't fit, what can I put there? I mean, then just instead of saying no, I don't know, just a suggestion.
Sure. If I may address that, Brian Chandler, Planning Director, Councilmember Schneider, just to answer your question, one of the reasons we proposed this amendment in the first place was to try to at least limit in that corridor, limit the potential proliferation of cell towers, and at least have some criteria to determine, with these second round of amendments that related to potential stealth. So that we certainly could, but if we are to review them on an individual basis, would prefer to have some criteria, and we can perhaps discuss it more if needed. We can bring back additional information at the second reading. But yes, I would like to have some criteria if we are to make that determination to look at all cell towers, because we just wanted to at least prohibit the the standard cell towers that we see that have a huge footprint. Those not the examples that Mr. Hubinger has shown. Excuse me, but so yeah, if we could certainly do that, we'd just prefer to have some criteria for consideration if that's the case.
With these cell towers, even the stealth, isn't there some sort of structure, a little building or something adjacent to that? So you're still not addressing that building. I guess it obviously couldn't be a metal building or whatever. I mean, how are we going to address, if you allow the stealth facility, address the structure that exists with it on the ground? I mean, there's going to have to be some standard of aesthetics there, I'm assuming, as well.
Sure, and I guess if you wouldn't mind just going through that, those examples to show, because it's limited ground equipment, and I'll let Mr. Huminger elaborate on that. I guess, do we have, yeah, so there are always some ground equipment. Is that correct? But it's...
Okay, back up on that one right there. Back up on one.
Back.
Yeah, right there. See in the background, the green?
Keep going.
By the sleeves.
Well, you got that right there.
Well, the sleeves are laying on the
Yeah,
ground.
the sleeves are laying on the ground.
Oh, this
Right
one?
there.
Ah,
Yeah,
you're talking about in the background.
That right there, to me, is less attractive than a pole in the ground, up in the air. I mean, you'd see that, I would think. I don't know.
Okay. So if we were, we could, if we were to pass this ordinance and ask that we come back, if y'all would come back in 2 weeks with a little bit better defined idea of what kind of cell phone towers there would be, we could do that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Thank you.
Council, are there any other questions or comments?
One other question on the modular home, or the, whatever we call the homes, was it staff's opinion to go from 10 to 15 years or no?
Yes, sir. We support that idea. He made a very compelling argument. I think we included his correspondence in your packet. So we felt like we should take his guidance on that. Mm-hmm.
So if I was to make a motion, there could be 2 additional things in there, going from 10 to 15 and going stealth mode on the
Yes, sir.
towers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I will now ask if anyone would like to make a motion on item 7.
I'll make a motion on item 7 with 2 changes, being able to have freestanding personal wireless service facilities, freestanding stealth personal wireless service facilities that pertains to the cell towers, and then on the modular homes that we would change the 10-year period from 10 to 15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 8, a first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing amendments to ordinance 2008-4230, the Choices 08 City of Temple Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 5, to amend the thoroughfare plan map.
Mayor and Council, this is case number ZFY 1510. We're bringing to you, I think, the first batch in a while of thoroughfare plan amendments. Planning and Zoning Commission considered this on March 2nd. We're bringing it to United for the first reading. Again, we try and summarize what the common theme is in the proposed amendments. In this case, we would like to just talk for a second before we get into that about what the thoroughfare plan does provide to staff. It's a very important document. It's part of our comprehensive plan. It's actually a companion document to the transportation section of the comprehensive plan, Chapter 5. It does display future alignments for new and existing collectors and arterials, letting us know where they're going to be placed. It's not a short-term document. It's a long-term document projecting years into the future, and a guiding document also for our transportation capital improvement plan. Most importantly, it allows us to preserve transportation corridors. This is particularly important in the platting process. We're able to see where we anticipate arterials and collectors going, and we're able to ask for that as part of the right-of-way dedication when those lands get developed. So staff is constantly referencing this document throughout the planning process to understand where we anticipate roadways to go and help facilitate the preservation of those important corridors. And just as a side note, this document is, I don't want to say it's conceptual. There's a lot of thought that goes into these alignments. But we've added some disclaimer language to our thoroughfare plan, basically stating that these alignments can move a couple hundred feet in either direction. A lot of things play into that ultimate determination, including the developer's needs. We try and work with a developer to maximize yield of their property, and they are all familiar with the dedication process when it comes to thoroughfare plans, but we do our best to try and work with them to make sure that the alignment works with the development as well. And then, of course, as these lines move from conceptual along to final design, there is some modification that is necessitated because of natural constraints, topographical constraints, and other elements that can ultimately affect the design. So some of the, and in fact, some of the items we're bringing to you tonight are in fact items that have been designed, and some change has been required because of that final design. Again, the unifying sort of a theme or common element in these is that we're proposing corrections to alignment that don't reflect a current development pattern. As development comes in, the alignment might shift, and we are trying to work with that development. If a road is being built, it might make more sense to extend that road than to extend some conceptual road that hasn't been built at all. Current plans and designs, we have some changes tonight that reflect items that have been are fairly advanced stages of design, and we would like to update the plan because we know how those roads are going to be built now. And then updates that, and we may or may not, but we probably won't bring updates to roads that are now constructed, that before were proposed and now are constructed, but we're bringing you one tonight. You've approved the proposed road, and then once it's constructed, we'll just make those updates as necessary. And then tonight we're bringing a new roadway that improves connectivity and mobility. This is something that we occasionally bring from time to time as needed. So I'm going to run through those very quickly. Item 1A and 1B, St. Andrew's Place, which was a proposed collector, is now going to be realigned, and Kleinite Drive will now be that proposed connector for that immediate area. So you can see 1A is St. Andrew's Place. It's going away. 1B is Kleinite Drive, which basically has partially already been constructed by the Groves of Lakewood Ranch, certain sections that have been constructed. We have picked that alignment based on the conceptual alignment presented to us in the preliminary plat by the developer, and then we've projected that alignment going north. So it essentially it provides some parallel connectivity, but it's farther along and more likely to occur than the St. Andrew's Place proposed collector. Item 2, Prairie View Extension to Farm to Market Road 2483. This just reflects current design of that Prairie View Extension. This has moved to advanced stages of design. We know what it looks like. We just want to update the plan to reflect that design. It's a new east-west collector. This actually has been on the Transportation Capital Improvements Plan. We brought this into the thoroughfare plan. This area is largely undeveloped. We have worked with BIC representatives, developers, and engineering staff to try and pick the best location for this. There is a BISD proposed campus in the immediate vicinity of that, so we've tried to draw that or project that alignment based on where that campus will come. I think that is a long-term project, but we have put a lot of thought. This line is moved. There were several options, and this is, I think, in the end, what was finally determined to be the best alignment. I'd like to say, just for the record, In the past, we have always, of course, shared these alignments with Temple Area Builders Association and gotten their approval, and that certainly is the case this evening. But in this case, under the direction of the Director of Planning, we have actually gone a step further and notified affected property owners. So we did any property owner that is anywhere in any way affected by not just this alignment, but any other new proposed alignments to include Conant Drive. We sent them a letter saying, hey, this is going to change. It's going to affect your property. You may or may want to give us a call, and we can talk and explain the process to you. And we did we met with several property owners and met, I think, with them to their satisfaction, so they understood the process. It, I think, allowed us to head off some surprises and maybe some angry feelings in the future. So that's a new thing we did, and we anticipate doing that in all future amendments. The Westfield Boulevard update, this is just a road that was proposed and is now constructed. So this is just one of those updates that occurs when roads move off the proposed list and into the now constructed list. And then just to give you a sense of where all these are located, primarily in the northwest quadrant of the city, but this just to give you an overall view of where these changes are occurring, and certainly reflects a lot of the development that's occurring. We'd like to just briefly kind of give you a heads up about some upcoming initiatives. We are trying to be very proactive about our transportation planning and really get out ahead of things. We are kind of doing a survey of right-of-way street standards and what communities typically ask for. We're hoping we met with a lot of the area cities through KTMPO and talked about how cities are doing arterials and collectors, how they're incorporating sidewalks, what those streets are looking like. And most of them have a range of typical street sections they're working with. So we anticipate working very closely with our thoroughfare plan, with, of course, you and the Planning and Zoning Commission, our engineering staff, to try and come up with some good, predictable alternative street sections that can be a guide for us in the future. Continued and strengthened coordination between our Transportation Capital Improvements Plan and the Thoroughfare Plan. And we're trying more and more to work with Public Works and make sure that we always have those updates on the Thoroughfare Plan. When something changes or a route study happens, that we immediately can reflect that on our Thoroughfare Plan and take those opportunities to get that right-of-way through the dedication process rather than the acquisition process when possible. We think as we continue to be proactive about that, rather than us responding to TCIP, we can become sort of the document that TCIP refers to as they determine their initiatives going 20 and 30 years out. And we hope to sort of make the Thoroughfare Plan that kind of document that really projects collectors and arterials years and years out so that we can all get a better sense of where the connectivity and mobility issues are. Planning and Zoning Commission voted 7-0 at March 2nd to approve these amendments to the Comprehensive Plan, Temple Thoroughfare Plan. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have relating to these amendments.
Council, any questions? I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of item 8.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider? Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Under resolutions, item 9, consider adopting a resolution appointing one at-large member to the Temple Economic Development Corporation to fill an unexpired term through September 1st, 2017. As I explained upstairs, this is more of a housekeeping item, and I'm nominating Steve Wright to fill that position. Mr. Wright was the chair of the reinvestment zone and resigned from that and had been on the TEDC board as that representative, and he's wishing to be put into an at-large position so that he can fulfill the rest of his term. And I'll entertain a motion for item 9.
Motion for approval.
Motion to second. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Schneider?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a good Easter weekend.